Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Couch Coding Developer Workflow. Your experts for today are Matt Cheney, co-founder here at Pantheon, and Ari Gold, Associate Product Manager, also at Pantheon. Just a few housekeeping items to go over before we start. Please make sure you submit any questions you have during the presentation in the question window. We want to answer as many of your questions during the presentation as possible, so make sure you keep submitting. Also, this session will be recorded, and the recording will be made available to everyone next week. And I'd like to turn it over to Matt and Ari.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Ari, one of the product managers here at Pantheon. Really excited about the couch coding today. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Matt, one of the co-founders here. Also excited about yet another couch coding where we talk about stuff on the Pantheon platform. You might be interested in, take your questions, and generally have a good time. We don't have champagne this week due to an oversight. We'll try to fix that.
And where's the couch?
Later.
I was told there would be a couch.
We have chairs. They're like nice chairs though. Although most people actually at the Pantheon office have standing desks because they're trying to be like more like, I don't know, aware and fit. But I feel sitting down really helps me focus, but maybe one day. But the way this works, just for those who haven't done couch coding before, is Ari and I will sort of do a little like some demo and like talk stuff at the beginning just to like set the stage, show you what Quiksilver is, talk about some new stuff that's happened, and then do like a little demo to actually show you sort of it in action. But most of this is questions and people, stuff that you are on your mind, things that maybe you think are cool, you just want us to like talk more about, things you've had problems with, you want to question or stuff you're confused or whatever about. We're generally trying to just sort of keep it informal, trying to take as many questions as possible, and hopefully have a pretty good time. So that's the general sort of vibe of the couch coding, just to set it out there.
All right, so yeah, I'll just start with kind of an overview. We know that building websites and web applications includes a lot of repetitive manual tasks, a lot of drudgery. We've released a set of cloud integration tools so you can let the robots do the work.
Yes.
It's all about automation. So let's dig into Quicksilver. Quicksilver is really, it's part of cloud integration tools. And we shipped an update recently with some new features, so I want to make sure we point those out. So this is just a GitHub repo with a set of example scripts. I'm going to kind of dig in. There's a whole bunch of example scripts you can kind of plug and play with. But let's check out this example.pantheon YAML file that'll let us kind of take a look at an overview of how it works. So it's all about automation. I'm gonna scroll down here. We'll come back up to the top in a minute. But with Quicksilver platform integration hooks, it's all about automation. If there's something you'd like to happen every time you do something on your site, when you clear the cache, maybe you want to go clear the CDN cache, or you're committing or deploying code, cloning a database. Maybe every time you pull back a database into dev, you want to sanitize the database. So every time. All you have to do is, Quicksilver lets you do that. So you tell us which script you want to run, and we'll run it automatically every time you or another team member triggers that corresponding workflow.
Anything you can do in PHP, you can do with Quicksilver, assuming you can do it in under 120 seconds, because there is a limit. Although you can make multiple scripts to go over if you want. Yeah,
right now we do have one web PHP. Like Matt said, it is limited to 120 seconds. We have built in, in the future we want to have other types. So, maybe a drush type, Quicksilver operation type, or WP CLI. But for now, anything you can do in web PHP, you can post out, do webhooks, all that sort of stuff. So you just have to set it up once in this Pantheon YAML file, put it in the root of your code base, point to the script, and every time, just let the robots do the work. So the update we just shipped included 2 new hooks. So now on site creation, you could have something, you could like post to Slack, letting your whole team know a new site was created in your org. So this lets you put a Pantheon YAML file in your custom upstream to do this type of thing. Also hook into multi-dev creation, syncing code, database clone, deploys, and clear cache. So all those things you can hook into, and that's how it works. So if you all have any questions at any time, please just punch them in there, and we'll definitely want to answer your questions. I think the best way to see this in action is to see it in action.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you want to give us a demo?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Quicksilver right here. Has a twin sister named Rhonda, raised by gypsies. And actually, like, because of some unfortunates, if you fans of Marvel Comics, like, became evil, which is not that. But I think for Quicksilver, more generally, I think of it less as like Quicksilver and more as platform hooks. That all of those things I already talked about. Creating new sites, creating new multi-davs, pushing code, deploying code, clearing caches, cloning databases. These are all things that like are happening on Pantheon automatically. And maybe for those who've used Pantheon for a while, like you forget the hard work that is actually sitting in and being like, dump the live database, move it to the dev database, find their credentials, like type them in wrong and have it say password error, then figure out how to type them in correct and import the database. But these are actually things the robots are doing on the back end. And you can sort of tell the robots to do extra stuff along with each of those operations. And so for the kinds of stuff that I think we're seeing a lot of our agency partners and people do web stuff do, that they want to hook into the platform to like run even more custom stuff, do more notifications. And a lot of this demo that'll show sort of helps to, sort of show off that kind of stuff. So this is the demo we're going to give at the DrupalCon Dublin, which is coming up next week for people who care about Drupal things. We did a similar demo at the WordPress Europe in Vienna, which was very nice as well. But it works about the same. A lot of what we find with the platform hooks is that it's less about the CMS and more about the external testing services or processes that you use. So that's just sort of put that out there, sort of ground stakes on this thing. But just to show you that we're not like doing anything too crazy, we've got this site set up. It has a bunch of bicycles on it because we love bicycles here at Pantheon. We have a dev test and live version of it, which we set up before. The key is that beyond just getting the site set up, so the Drupal 8 site for what's worth, we set up a pantheon.yaml file and related scripts. And so this is just to preview what's going to happen. This is the sort of the robot instruction set that we have. And I think one of the things that I think is great about Quiksilver and the platform hooks is that the actual like concept is not it's not like crazy engineering or super tricky. It's that there's some workflows like Ari mentioned. There's 6 of them, and you can run PHP code before or after they run, and you define it in a YAML file because it sounds like camel and that's sort of funny, and then you put a script directory, hopefully in the private directory because that's not web accessible, lest other robots tell your robots what to do, and that could lead to bad outcomes if you watch science fiction. But like you basically, to actually use the platform hooks, it's define workflow, define script, and run script. So you end up not actually, like once you sort of get that concept, it's relatively straightforward to like build a ton of these things. But the real magic on this though is like sort of what you're going to do with the scripts. And so in this script, what we're doing is a few things. We're posting to Slack for a bunch of different stuff on the platform. We're pretty big fans of Slack here at Pantheon because team communication is fun and they have like integrations to do animated GIFs and stuff. But the same kind of thing would work if you're using like a HipChat or IRC or something else. Like, just telling people you're doing stuff is good because then you get, people sort of know that's happening. They can coordinate. You can get sort of credit for that. And too much. I feel like if you're slaving away coding, you want other people to know. So have the robots sound the horn. Stuff's happening. And then most of what we're going to do is actually do testing. Because one of the things I think from a Quiksilver perspective, and a good thing that really is helpful, is to automatically test your code. You do a continuous integration cycle. Have every commit or every deploy go through a series of different tests to see if it's any good. That's something that sort of as web developers, we probably do some testing, but not all the time and not always as detailed. And it's hard to test something you did. In my case, I'm such a, I usually do things right, so I usually waste my time testing, and but the robots are not so generous, of course, and will tell you the truth and stuff like that. So, but sort of to show you the demo, we got this little site going on. We've got those Pantheon hooks set. Luckily, because we've got a new update for the Drupal, we actually have a Drupal update. So we're going to go live test this update just to make sure everything's really chill. So we have our dev site right here. So let's go ahead and apply the update. We haven't actually done this update before, so if it breaks horribly, we'll find somebody to blame for that. Probably me. But updates are pretty cool on Pantheon, of course. One click, get it all rolling. This is something we trigger through the UI, but you could also trigger this with script. We have some people do automatic updates, which is pretty cool. Our colleague Andrew Taylor, who's a very smart individual, is going to has a blog post coming to do automatic updates for WordPress, but running through a deployment workflow to make sure stuff doesn't break, not just YOLOing it and doing it live. So we're getting this update installed. Basically, it's going to apply the new version of the Drupal, and then it's going to clear the caches and stuff like that, just to sort of kick things off with all of that. And that's pretty great. But then what we want to do is we actually want to go ahead and start to do a deployment so that we can actually go ahead and sort of start to run some of this stuff. So we go ahead here. This is where sort of the deploy happens. We'll say update to Drupal 8.1.10. And here's where hopefully we'll start to see some of this kind of magic happen. So we've basically clicked one button. This is one of my favorite buttons actually to click in Drupal or in Pantheon for Drupal updates or WordPress updates, because with one button we actually do so much. It's should just be like a big like purple button or something. You click it, all this magic happens. So the first thing that happened is you can see here on the right, we actually had Quicksilver fire off that Slack notification. So that's just telling us on this site, at this day, at this message, this environment, we actually did a deploy. And obviously we knew we just did that, but if you were sitting on the Slack channel and not really, and weren't like when is the update going out? Well, you now know. You don't even have to tell. And that just happened. It also, of course, just in Pantheon world, it actually moved the code from dev to test. And it also is copying the database from the live to the test environment. Because when you're doing testing, it's very important to have a very similar environment for testing as you would do for other, as production. So Pantheon helps you out a lot because the test environment is the same version of Nginx, PHP, MariaDB. It's got the same configuration files and everything else. And then because it has the latest code and the latest database, it's very, very similar. And that allows us to do all this different stuff we want to do. So the first little example I showed you Quiksilver is actually to do a configuration import. That's something that, for those who are sort of familiar with features module in Drupal 7, the WP CFM plugin in WordPress, or configuration management in Drupal 8, this is this ability to sort of take the GUI clicking that you might do, and instead of writing it on a piece of paper and then redoing it every time you do a deploy, you could actually export that configuration into code. And that code lives in version control and can be deployed along with your other code. But typically in each of those cases, WP CFM plugin, features, or Drupal 8 configuration management, you actually have to go into the GUI when you deploy it and hit a button that says sync configuration or pull configuration or override features, whatever, or revert features, whatever. Luckily, Quicksilver actually lets us do that very quickly. So if I can go in, I'll show you. And a lot of stuff we're showing off today is sort of as part of this Quicksilver examples repo on GitHub. And this is something, please ask us questions about anything you see in here. If you just Google Pantheon Quicksilver examples, you'll find this. Because this is all stuff that we think is pretty valuable for people. So one of the things that we have here is the drudge config import situation. It's basically saying, here's the code you need to copy to actually have that work, and then here's the script that you need to do. And the script, it doesn't do very much because it's just saying run this one drudge command, config import -y, and it'll actually import the configuration automatically. Same thing for the WP CFM. You basically run some commands here using the WordPress magic, and that actually will make sure the configuration plugin is there. Then it will actually do the import for you, which is really nice. And that's good because then instead of having to have any human involvement, like you have all this other stuff we're doing later, these free tests, they all just will exist as their own kind of tests, and you can sort of automatically do this. So one of the things I like to do is when I do the test, sort of will walk away and go get like some sort of pastry or drink or something from the and come back, and the robots have done a bunch of my work for me, which is a very satisfying feeling. It's a feeling I think a lot of us will feel as robots do more and more things for us until they ultimately kill us. But that's a ways away. Right now, we're just having them do things like cross-browser testing, which maybe if we make the robots do IE testing, that actually is one of the reasons they'll eventually rise up. But this is sort of to get into the testing option. I've got 3 tests here that I was going to show. And these are all tests that I think are things as web developers we probably should do and have done. I know, Ari, if you've done any cross-browser testing in your life.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of that.
No. I've done a lot of it. Also, way easier, by the way, for any like youth on the call, that didn't have to deal with IE6 or like some of the weirdness of like the sort of medium old internet. Like you are blessed because that stuff was woo. But these days, like for cross-browser testing, like by cross-browser, you actually mean cross-device. So it's like, use the different browsers, but also now you have mobile browsers. And since like basically everyone just uses their mobile phone to do stuff, it's sort of hard, because like, maybe you have a phone, or you probably have a phone, but you may not have an iPhone and an Android or whatever. And so like to actually go in and do a lot of this testing can be a little bit of a pain, right? You got to like try to open a bunch of different VMs to get different versions of stuff. You got to try different phones, this is a lot. Luckily, there's like totally easy ways to just go ahead and automatically do those tests. And there's an example that we've got here using this Spotbot service, which is one of many services that do sort of cross-browser testing. You basically define it, and then it'll actually run a straight-up curl request to do a scan. And a lot of the stuff that I think is the coolest Quicksilver platform hook integration is actually stuff that uses third-party services. These are things where, like, the actual testing is done by other people. Like if you're like sort of into Pantheon, you use Pantheon. Part of the reason I assume you're into Pantheon is that Pantheon, like we have 100 people that work here. We're experts at servers. We like have spent 5 years building this whole infrastructure. Like we're good at this. This is what we want to do. And we're happy to like let you push a couple buttons on the UI and then have all this other stuff happen in the background so you can focus on like building websites for your customers, your clients, your friends, fans, followers, etc. Same thing is true for testing. There are services that already have 1,000 VMs that run all the different versions of everything you want. Instead of having to set that all up yourself, try to make it all work, just use the API and then they'll do it for us. Great. With Quiksilver is that after you use the API, we'll actually even show off the little results, result tab, and you can just click on this thing, and you can actually see we have a couple of screenshots done. It takes a while to like process all the screenshots for all the different browsers, but you can sort of see, oh, like Internet Explorer, I didn't have to like boot up Windows 8.1 to get this all working. I just could look here, and I can sort of like sketch down and see, oh, that looks really decent-ish as well. And that's a great way for you to like sort of check out your cross-browser without having to actually do cross-browser. I'm still, of course, in Firefox. It's also something too if like you're a developer, but maybe you have like another person to do QA, which we definitely recommend. It's hard to QA your own stuff. It's instead of having to like send them an email being and then them to go do a bunch of stuff. Like that link is already posted in Slack. They just need to like go in there and like do whatever. Be like, oh, that looks great. Thumbs up. So that's a good way to sort of get off and running. And there's a bunch of tools to do cross-browser testing. You can definitely go and find others and have lots of fun with that. But quick hook for the platform. You hook in, works, that's great. Okay. Next tool that I'll show off is actually a tool maybe some of you haven't heard about. It's called visual regression testing. It's sort of new. Visual regression testing is basically this idea of if I'm doing a deployment, like from dev to test, and then test to live, I want to focus on the stuff that changes on the website. So like I can look at it in IE and sort of be like, okay, does this look okay? And that's like a decent check. But in the case here, we're deploying Drupal 8.1.10, new security update. No new features, no new code, no new CSS. It's like just bug fixes and security updates. Now, when we're deploying this, we actually should not see any change between the production and the test version because it doesn't change how it looks. But sometimes, you know, things do change, like it gets like errors or it like, you know, adds weird spacing or whatever like that. Well, this doesn't look good. Yeah, I'm gonna mess that up. In this case, maybe we do have some change. Oh, I moved the things around. Sorry, friends. The way this works with the visual regression is it actually will look at the sort of old and the new version of this thing and see what actually changed.
So you set up your baseline image.
And then you compare it. And so in Pantheon, it's really nice because you already have a live version and you have a test version and you can do a comparison. Now, I had moved around some blocks yesterday on this thing, so it's not going to be 0% difference, which is what I was hoping for. Because it'd be like, oh, if there's 0% that we deploy. But what you can see, though, is that we actually had blocks over here on the right, and they got moved over here on the left. So that's important to know. Now, it's not always going to be the most helpful, because when you're just moving a lot of stuff around the page, stuff is going to look different. But if you're doing a security update or something like that, seeing a 0% difference is important. And that's something I think is a nice like, kind of testing thing just to build in. And having that run automatically and just work, you know, pretty cool. And then it just sort of goes to town. Third test, just to sort of conclude the sort of demo piece here, is that we also are running a performance test. One of the things that you're probably interested in is making your websites fast. That's something that is really sort of nice. And to make websites fast, there's a lot of tools for it. One of the tools that we offer on Pantheon is New Relic, which if you're into New Relic, is definitely a nice kind of way to sort of like see the different performance of the site. It's pretty easy. You have to like enable it or whatever, but then you can just click on through the dashboard and actually see all the different stuff that's happening on the site, which is good.
And you get New Relic Pro for free now, which gives you the ability to kind of drill down into how your application's performing, looking at MySQL transactions, stuff like that, right?
Exactly. And that's actually a really great value. You turn it on, you just can't see the data. But one of the issues you might run into is that when you're like running a test deployment or something, like you don't actually have any traffic to look at, right? Because it's like a test thing. It's just like you and like whoever you showed it to clicking through it. But with something like Load Impact, which is a testing service, we could actually run a whole test. So in this case, we kicked off an automatic test. It's going to like simulate a login. It's going to do a bunch of different, like 50 virtual users, sort of check stuff out. And then it's actually going to give us some graphs here, which are nice. But we can also go into to New Relic and sort of see what's going on. In this case, we've got various kinds of things sort of triggering and stuff like that. And you can sort of say, oh, there's this huge like web external request. Like, what's going on there? I know it's Google Maps being crazy, so maybe that's not so great. Or I can, focus in here and sort of see, oh, we have some database calls, right here. Like, what's that actually happening? Is there something we can optimize or whatever? And that having that sort of performance baseline is really helpful because it helps provide data for New Relic. It also helps to provide sort of a baseline too. So like you can look and say if we've deployed 5 times today, we should hope that like the performance of the site's about the same every single time. If like on time 3 it like is doubled how long the site took to respond, maybe something in that third time is something we should check out for performance. Which if you're not testing every deploy, which you probably wouldn't do unless you have all robots doing it, you could then be like, I don't know, I've like done a ton of stuff the last 2 weeks. What could be slow? And now you have to go figure it out. Where if you have data to like see, oh, it was that deploy on that day that doubled your time, you can really sort of hone in on what's going on. So,
and there's even a Quicksilver example to log your deployments to New Relic, which is a nice way to track those changes.
very, very good point.
So every time you deploy, just post to New Relic, a marker will show up when you're looking at New Relic. So let's say you turn on PHP 7. If you set up this New Relic deploy logging first, you'll be able to see, like, when I turn PHP 7 on, you'll see a big dramatic impact in performance. I know that's been like a common theme on our blog recently with PHP 7.
Yeah, we're all about PHP 7. We think you should be too. It's, you know, it's a new version of the language. It's easy. It's like one line to turn on in Pantheon YAML, and it can actually make your site quite a bit faster. So if you've got a site right now that's not running PHP 7, like, absolutely set up a multi-div branch, turn on PHP 7 there, click around, do some tests, see if it looks good. And if it does, do a New Relic deploy and sort of see what the performance is before and after. It's a pretty easy way to, like, you know, get some, in many cases, serious gains. I mean, your mileage may vary, depends sort of what you're doing, but you know, especially if your site's doing a lot of PHP processing, it almost certainly will be faster, and that's a nice way to sort of roll. But otherwise, I did a deploy just to like finish up the update here. You'll see it notified people, and then it did the import and stuff like that. But sky's the limit with what platform hooks can do. Anything you do in PHP, you can do in Quicksilver. We have a bunch of examples of stuff that's pretty nice here. We'd be curious sort of what people's experiences using it are, or any questions folks might have about how to make that all work.
All righty. Please feel free to submit any questions you have now. The first one we're going to take is Quicksilver available exclusively on Pantheon?
So Quicksilver, in the way that we're showing, is on Pantheon. Like, this is how Pantheon does it. But the concept of a platform hook, more generally, is available on a lot of different in a lot of different ways. And it's stuff that you can build yourself. If you have a script that, like, you know, does like dump database from live to dev, you could, like, in the middle of the bash script, like, run PHP interpreter and run stuff. But, like, you know, we're just trying to make it easy for people to do it. So instead of having to, like, support, like, your own platform hook, you could go ahead and do it. So the way we do it is specific to Pantheon, and we think is a very good, easy, best practice way to do it. You want to do test and deploy, type after, run a script, good to go. But platform hooks isn't something we magically came up with. It's, you know, certain, you know, it exists in the world, but we're trying to make it as good and try to do it the Pantheon way. Trademark.
Right. Next question is, how do you automatically how do you run PHP tests through Drupal?
So take a shot at this. So the Drupal runs a number of different ships with a bunch of different tests built into it, and there are other PHP testing frameworks that you can get. One of the easiest things in sort of Drupal world is that, like, a lot of these tests are actually built into, they have drush versions, drush commands for them. So probably the most basic sort of way to do a test using something that has a drush command is you actually just write a Quicksilver command that calls drush directly. And you could do, like, you could use drush to call simple test and run those things and then check the output or whatever. You could do it so that you could have you could also just call specific PHP tests as well. You know, basically, like, however you're doing the testing right now, like, manually, if that's something that can be done on in PHP, which the Drupal test can be, you just slap it in a script and then just have that script run every time.
So the next one is more of a statement for discussion and or response from our two speakers, and that is, the Drupal 8 installation doesn't warn that the site won't initialize properly in its default Git mode. and must be switched to SFTP before install.php will run. What do you think about adding this to the onboarding process?
So I'm well familiar with this particular issue. Drupal has a situation where if you don't have write access to settings.php when you install, it gets upset. This has been true for a while. There is a patch we have on Drupal.org to try to fix this. It's not been committed. We have an issue around that. Basically, the reason for it is that settings.php gets writes an install state to it for the profile, and that needs to be written. It doesn't really need to do that, but it thinks it does. Documenting that more is certainly a good idea. It does give you a warning, or it errors when you install. It's like you have to have write access, but I would say it's something we're definitely aware of. It's on our GitHub issue queue. For any Drupal 8, by the way, issues, Pantheon drops 8 issues where it shows the stuff that we know about, and it's something we sort of need Drupal core to change. So maybe in DrupalCon Double next week we'll bug some people and try to move that along.
Yeah, I know we'd like to move along the upstream issue. I'm not sure the last time you actually tried to install Drupal 8, but if you're in Git mode, you try to install it, but you visit the dev site, you will see an error there saying switch into Git mode. So we did actually add that. We can't catch it early, but we can direct you to the right way to do it right now, which is just switch into SFTP mode before you install Drupal 8.
Alrighty, next question is, how do you do cross-browser testing?
How do you do it? You get a cross-browser testing service. So spotbot.qa was the one I showed off. It's a pretty simple project, but there's also Apple Tools is another good one, a little more robust. But there's a lot of different versions of these. Basically, the way you do it is you get it, you then set up a series of pages that you want to do testing for. So you'll like URLs typically. In the example I showed, we just did the home page. You can do multiple pages. And then you actually can implement something like that Spotbot curl request I showed, where you actually are calling. You basically have your API key, you have your project URL or project key, and then you actually do a curl command to call the specific scan. And then that will actually kick off that scan. It'll return to you, you'll see down here, it will return response. That's that URL. And then you can post that URL in Slack and then get something like this, so you can see what your thing looks like on iPhone 6.
And in the demo, when you deployed the test, it just fired off all these different third-party services automatically. So you deployed the test, it fired off the Spotbot script, right?
Yep.
And there's you were just showing kind of the results of that. It was posted into Slack. You could click it. You could see all of the different, how it looks in all the cross browsers. So you don't have to pick up your iPhone. You don't have to bug someone else. Hey, what does this look like on an iPad? You could manually do that, very manually, or you could fire off Spotbot to do it manually. But this time it's so there's different layers of automating this, right?
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where seriously, if there's a kind of test you want to do, you want to do a security scan for the website, go out and find a service that does security scans of website and see if they have an API, and many, many, many do. And then just build a little bit of a script that says, okay, call the API to run the scan and get the link for the results back and post it to Slack, email it to you, whatever. And then add that to your Quicksilver platform hooks. And so every time your site does it, it'll do a security scan, it'll run a Jenkins job, it'll do do a performance test, whatever, and then you can get that kind of testability.
Alrighty, we're going to take one more question here, and that is, if I run a Quicksilver operation, how do I see the output of it?
So good question. So one of the things that we showed with the demo is sort of exporting to Slack. So there is this Slack notification plugin you can turn on, and you can use that to sort of tell Slack sort of what's going on. But I mean, not everybody uses Slack, and sometimes it's too noisy. So one of the things that we have on the platform is a command in the most excellent Terminus. So there's you can do.
So Terminus is just the command line interface for Pantheon, letting you interact with Pantheon through the command line. And this is the way that you can get insight into what's going on with Quiksilver, right?
Yeah, and so there's a Terminus workflows is a command, and then you specify the site, of course. And then watch will do like sort of a tail -f or tail on the file, so you can actually see what's going on. But you can also do a list, and you can actually see all the different operations. So, I mean, there's a little. So we have, so you can go ahead and sort of like, see the different stuff that happened, and you can do based on ID, say, okay, we did that deploy to code to test, so we can do like a Terminus workflows show, and then the show will actually, choose my site. When you actually do the show, it'll actually go ahead and show you the different things that are running, and then you can actually choose which one you want to do. You can also specify all this on the line, and you can actually get the outputs. You can actually see, oh, here's what happened. So like that load impact test actually outputted the actual link test results. Kicking off cross-browser testing happened up here. Just starting visual regression test happened right there. And anything that you echo or print in that PHP statement is going to show up in that workflow, and you can actually see all the Quicksilver operations that are running right here as part of that deployment. And that's a good way to get information. You can, and we keep those logs around for a couple weeks so you can see stuff, or you can just watch it live.
And if you want to work on your own script, this is definitely a good tool. Workflows watch while you're debugging. Also check out the debug in the Quicksilver examples. That way you can kind of see all the variables that are available to you. Environmental variables.
I usually start, if I'm starting with it, I'll go to this Quicksilver examples debugging example and just add this as my starting point for Quicksilver. Because it'll actually show you it'll print out that the example's running, but it'll show you the post value and the server environmental values. And those are good just because you may want to have the deploy, when you do a deploy, you want to maybe run stuff in tests, you don't run in the live environment, maybe you want to know who's doing it or various information about the site. And then you can make judgments based on that in the PHP as well.
So we're going to sneak another question here, and that is, can you run Quicksilver hooks to run on multiple sites, not just one site?
What's those few? So yeah, so the question is, can you run Quicksilver commands on multiple sites? So one thing that I think, if you're using a custom upstream for your site, so if you have one Git upstream and you have multiple sites created on it, you can put a platform hook code in there, Pantheon YAML and code in there, and then it'll run on multiple, on each of the sites. If you just have say 20 sites and you run commands on all 20 of them, the way the Quicksilver thing works is that it sort of hooks into a specific operation. So if you wanted to run a Quicksilver command to clear the cache of 20 sites, that trigger a Quicksilver clear cache of their own CDNs, you would need to actually trigger that 20 times. But I think that's okay, because I think part of the magic of Quicksilver, it's hooking into stuff that's already happening. So if you can have something automatically happening, it'll just run all of that at once. And if you have a Pantheon account, and you have 20 sites, 20 scripts can run simultaneously. That's no problem for those sites.
So like if you were applying that Drupal 8 update, you just applied it to one site. If you had another 20 sites you wanted to apply it to, you could go to each dashboard, click Apply Update. You could also script it with Terminus. So if you've added that Pantheon YAML file to your custom upstream, and then you can script Terminus to iterate through each of your sites and do that. So that's one thing to do.
A lot of folks get really strong into the Terminus scripting. I mean, especially if you like servers and you like doing DevOps stuff. Like Pantheon will do the basics, backups, deployments, all this stuff. You can then write your own custom Quicksilver tasks. You can write your own Terminus scripting, and you can do a lot with the platform, standing on the shoulder of giants and stuff.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions or feedback, please visit our website, where you'll find a Contact Us page, and we'll put you in touch with the best member of our team. Have a great week, everyone.
Goodbye.
Later.